I'm Amy Morgan, the feature writer for the Marriage Initiative, and I am just delighted to introduce Kenny Sanderfer to you. Kenny's a licensed marriage and family therapist who began researching and practicing emotionally focused therapy when the modality was still new. He co-authored Created for Connection, the Hold Me Tight Guide for Christian Couples in 2016 with EFT pioneer Dr. Sue Johnson. Kenny's founded and directs nonprofit EFT Tennessee, where he educates and trains EFT therapists across several states. He's developed the Created for Connection online course that's being used by the U.S. Army chaplains as a significant modality in marriage enrichment, as well as a robust marriage helper training class available through the International Christian Coaching Institute. Kenny, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, tell us about EFT. What is it? I know it's based on attachment theory, but can you unpack it? Like a lot of us have probably heard those words, but we don't really know what they mean.
Yeah, it's emotionally focused therapy, and it's the model that Sue Johnson came up with back in the 80s. Prior to that time, there wasn't much emotion was not really allowed in the room. It was thought to be a very negative thing, something you tried to work around or whatever. And most of the modalities are about cognitive behavioral, changing the way we think, behavioral, trying to make sense of how we grew up in our family of origin and those kind of things. So it was a real paradigm shift, and it wasn't actually very well received in the very beginning. She really was pioneering something very new. But what she did that's, I think, really unbelievable was she sat down and she watched numerous, if not hundreds of tapes of work with, distressed couples. And she looked at it, and I think part of what she realized is that relationships are so complex. Yeah, you can come at these things from 100 different directions, and it's like almost like a moving train, trying to stop sometimes in session. But what she did was she went through it, and she identified or watched the couples and realized that there were some real identifiable patterns to how couples interact. And so she began to identify those and label those. And so that really sort of was the beginning part here, which is really a systemic sort of element. And then she realized that those are really protective strategies from an attachment perspective. When we're vulnerable, what do we do? And we're vulnerable in intimate relationships. Well, how do we protect ourselves? And so half the world kind of would love to get out of the situation, would like to withdraw and move away, okay, and kind of take a breather and not address it if at all possible. Why do we have to why do you bring this up all the time? And then the other half of the world really is like, why can't we just have this conversation? It's not that big a deal. Can we just not have this conversation? Why do you want to put it off? You know how important this is for me. Why do you want? And then there creates that dance. So that's sort of what we call in the materials in therapy, we call it pursue, withdraw. In our marital enrichment, we call it demon dialogues, just a name to it. And then what was interesting, though, she realized that underneath those protective strategies are there for a purpose, number one. So we don't try to take them away. They're there for a good reason. But then what is underneath those? And we realized that she realized that when we could access those vulnerabilities, those attachment related emotions that are underneath that, and be able to stop and slow down and have those conversations, that change began to happen in session. So, and one of the main reasons for looking at emotion is that we know now without a doubt, all neuroscience confirms what I'm about to say. It's the fastest way to repair, okay, or to growth and repair. And it's also has the least relapse rate. So we have a very brief, short period of time with couples that they are, many of them are on the edge of making some tough decisions about their relationships. So she created a map and a structure so we could sort of weed out all the information and the stuff that's coming at us that doesn't really, matters, but it take forever to do something with. and to
Yeah.
really focus. So that's the focus mean to me, the word focus is the most important part. And so that's what we do. And we've been trained how to focus on what's important and how to graciously move people back to what we're really trying to accomplish here. And so anyway, that eventually that took off, and it's really changed the world. It's just amazing how big it's been. And now attachment theory was just a theory. And now
Yeah.
it's a science. There's enough research to say that it is a science.
Well,
So,
let's talk about that, because the emotionally focused therapy, and that's where that focus comes from that you were just
yeah.
talking about. Attachment theory. What is attachment theory, and how did that, first of all, tell us what it was and how it was first researched in children, right? And then we can apply
Mhm.
that with to the couples and their
Yeah.
relationships.
John Bowlby, if we want to give him credit for his work in attachment theory way back. And what he realized is that he realized that all the how children reacted and responded with their moms, because he was very much working with kids. And back then, I think it was called, he did a study of the 9 juvenile delinquents or something. If something like that, that terminology would not over so good now, but that was a description. Yeah, juvenile thieves. That was what the title was.
Oh, wow.
But he looked at it, and he realized that that they were very withdrawn and avoidant, and then looked at their how they grew up, and started to begin to make sense that their protective strategies. And the real issue, those strategies were there because the important people in their life, and especially in the beginning, were not accessible, responsive, and emotionally engaged with them, which is what is bond. That's what a bond is when we reach and cry out and someone reaches back to us. And so there were studies. Mary Ainsworth did other studies that identified the different the anxious, insecurely attached children, the withdrawn children, and the disorganized children, even, who have experienced trauma. And so Sue was actually having a conversation one time with a bunch of the other therapists way back in the 80s, and they were arguing, no, it was just a deal. Relationships are just a bargain. It was just a transactional thing. And she said, it just came out of her mouth, no, they're bonds. They're not bargains.
Yeah.
And that's when she went to she looked at attachment theory, and about that time, adult attachment was starting to come online. And so we realized that we, from the cradle to the grave, we all long for secure attachment. We all long for connection. We all long to know that we're not alone in this world, and that the ones we love the most will be there with us and accessible and responsive to us. And when that happens, it creates a safe place, and we can actually become more autonomous and independent and move away, which flies in the face of Western civilization thought, where you need to become independent. If 2 independent people come together, and you'll have a good marriage. But the difference here is that on the backside of safe connection is autonomy. I become more creative. I can move further. I can never be where I'm at right now, and experience the crazy things I've experienced, in my field, with the number 1 marital therapist in the world, Sue Johnson. If it wouldn't be for my wife, who's always been there, she's my significant other. She's my go-to. She's my everything. So that very much is what she really started focusing on, that we don't outgrow that. And that's, it's not that we become, sometimes it's not that we become enmeshed, it's interdependent. Is the word. We become interdependent.
And have that secure attachment, that because the person that you love the most transfers from
Yeah.
the parent to the partner, and then you're free to flourish because you have that security. So how did you get involved with Sue Johnson?
That is a good question. I have revisited that a whole lot in my life, and it was definitely God was involved in that one, because, when you look back and you're trying to connect the dots and they don't always add up, you
Yeah.
realize that he was definitely involved. So I embraced the model very early on after reading that particular article, Bonds versus Bargains. And it just turned me right side up or upside down, whichever. And I went and out to the trainings, and then the trainings led to me being introduced at one time to Sue. I got to meet with Sue, and then she invited me to be on the trainer track. There's like 14, I think, in the world at that time.
Wow.
And so I went through the significant journey to become a trainer. And she was, just a special mentor to me, and taught me so much. And so that's how that came to be. And then our relationship, it's really confusing because we're two most different people in the whole world.
That's what you said.
Yeah, she's from, Britain. She moved to Canada. Oh my gosh, she's academic. She's the most intelligent person I think I've ever been around. Could have a conversation about anything. And, then here I am, cowboy from East Texas. But anyway, something about that, we connected and we became good friends. And then not only she was not only my mentor, but good friends. And then she agreed to sit down, and we revised the Homey Type book, the secular book that she put out first, and revised that for Christian
Well,
audience.
talk about that a little bit, because let's talk a little bit. She had come out with the Hold Me Tight book,
Yeah.
2008. Was that correct?
Correct.
And it was how to apply the EFT to the couples relationships, correct? And it was a huge bestseller in the secular market, right?
Very much so. Yeah, bro. Top 10 bestseller list. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you convinced her that there was a real need for the faith community, right?
Yes. We had many conversations. It wasn't easy. It wasn't just okay with Will. I had to talk her into it, or she says I talked her into it. I think it wasn't quite that difficult. But yeah, she was for getting EFT out to all people. So we revised it, number one, to make it more faith friendly. And which I told her, I said it's all all of our books are in like 10, 12, 13 languages or something. And when you edit something or create something for, you don't just change the language, you change the culture. You have to respect the culture. And so that's kind of was how I tried to sell it to her. And she is very gracious, very open. And we sat down, and then we had this wonderful opportunity to, I'd go to Ottawa and sit, and we wrote forever, on the book, and having so many good conversations about scripture and God, and how that all connects with bonding science. And so it turned into be, quite a relationship. And then fast forward, I guess, she passed away last year, 2024 in April. And I would say that the 3 years before that, she was struggling with, fighting cancer. And my relationship with her was more pastoral. I didn't really talk shop. And so I was with her during that process, on up till actually the day before she died. I got to pray with her. And then I had the most incredible honor of my life was to, do a eulogy for her. And she won what is equivalent to the Nobel Peace Prize in the U.S., the Order of Canada. So they were all kind of important, very important people at that time. So yeah, it's been quite a ride, and something I could never imagine.
A Texas Bronco rider from East Texas, and you actually did ride Broncos, correct?
I did. Yes, in my youth, high school, and up through college, I rode. I was in what we call Western sport. I rode bareback broncs. I competed. Yeah, in
Wow.
Texas, Oklahoma, and mainly Louisiana. Mm-hmm.
And then to be delivering the eulogy for an Order of Canada winner, that, like you said, that's God, right?
It is.
Oh, I love that. And you actually still have horses, right? And you use some
Yeah,
horses therapy
I
that
do.
you
Yeah, I live on a farm. I have a farm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I have an apartment. I do intensives with couples that come in, and I use my horses for equine therapy. So I integrate EFT and equine therapy, and all my animals actually. So we kind of gives us an opportunity to break out and do that. And I still train a little bit with horses, and I don't ride anymore because I just don't bounce so good when I hit the ground anymore.
You did enough hitting on the ground in your lifetime to.
Yeah. So anyway, still big, always has been and probably will be until I leave this earth. I don't have horses in my life yet.
Oh, so let's go back to Creative for Connection. Can you walk through 7 conversations? That's in the book, and you also have the online course, and they correspond, correct? Let's talk a
Yes.
little bit about that.
Yeah. So the creative, what the 7 conversations, let me start with that. So, that's the marital enrichment, piece, that part. But what Sue did was she looked at all her tapes and all through the therapy lens, and she came up with the 7 conversations that she had witnessed couples going through to come out the other side.
Yeah.
And so she took those, and that's what she wrote. It's this marital enrichment course. And so that's the basis for the Hold Me Tight, secular, and for the Creative for Connection and the Creative for Connection online course. It's all the 7 conversations. The book is the 7 conversations. The Creative for Connection, we integrated faith. So it's actually, we added to that, talk about our bond with God, our relationship. We use examples, like Jesus is always accessible and responsive, emotionally engaged, and especially responded to vulnerability, which is interesting. He'd stop dead in his tracks for like the woman with the issue of blood. Out of all the people there, she reached for him. He recognized the vulnerable place she was in and the risk she took, and he stopped dead in his tracks and turned to be with her. Just examples like that throughout. And and then the online program just came up last year. I revised the program that she had done, and the Canadian military uses it. And then the Creative for Connection now, the U.S. Army uses it, and a lot of adoption agencies are using it. A lot of people are catching on to it. But it's the same thing. It's the 7 conversations. It's not, the video itself is more the Hold Me Tight part, right? I say, but if you read the book, so in other words, the book, the videos, and everything are all in sync, so that they're all in sync, so you can get the faith integration, which is a really crucial part.
You kind of gave a little teaser with the Hold Me Tight. Can you go through some of those conversations a little bit? The Hold Me Tight is what, conversation 3 or 4? I don't remember. But can you walk through a little bit where it starts? And like it says, it's marital enrichment. It kind of helps a couple get to a better place at the end, right?
It's marital enrichment, and it mirrors what we've learned in therapy working with couples. So the first one is identifying the negative interactional pattern. I made reference a while ago that Sue looked for these patterns. They just stood out to her. So everybody has if we call it a dance. Every relationship has a dance, a way they relate to each other. And it varies too from the nature of the two or whatever. And of course we have them in work, we have them in every area of our life, which is interesting because we can navigate maybe some negative patterns that play out in a work setting like that, and maybe navigate those. But boy, when it starts getting down to the most important person in our life, it lights us up.
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever that bond is threatened or whatever. So then when we feel threatened or we feel vulnerable, then like I said a while ago, we typically either shut down to move away to protect ourselves, and hoping it'll pass over, or we became anxious. So all the different, there's three different kind of options here, but they're all a derivative of that pursue and that withdrawal. So then the next conversation that, by the way, we guide couples through. But what we do is we don't coach or teach them. We set it up. We give them examples. We show videos or live sessions of where couples have navigated those conversations. And then we send them off for 40 minutes to go through this conversation themselves. So this is their work. This is their deal, not ours. It's not psychoeducation. We're not coaching, nor not pushing. And then those conversations and exercises guide them through the identifying of their cycle. And then we come back, process that. They go back, they do the second cycle, which is what's going on underneath my angry pursuit and your withdrawal.
Yeah.
When I'm angry, actually, I'm scared because I'm scared that we're never going to connect like we used to. And I really want you to listen to me, and you need to listen to me now. And the other person gets overwhelmed and shuts down and moves away. But what's underneath that? Well, I'm scared is underneath it, right?
Yeah.
That's very different than come out
Yeah.
and we'll come in there and get you. And then for the withdrawal, it's like I feel like I never get it right. I can't get it right. And then every time we get in these arguments, I just tell myself I'll never get it right. There's something missing here. Maybe I don't know how to do them. I don't know how to do relationships. I hadn't had a lot of practice here. What does that mean? So whenever we shift from the cycle up here on top, okay, and this just endless repetitive cycle, and slow it down, able to have conversations underneath, then those conversations really change us. And they also change everything. It changes how we see ourselves and how we see others. Then the next one is actually the hold me tight conversation, where we really sit and walks them through a deeper place, and then they sit there a longer, and then they try it out. The next conversation, they try it out in real time, and then we go through their sex and bonding conversations, and then the very last session is just how do we keep our love alive. And that's just basically how do we create like attachment rituals. That's sometimes different model. Traditionally, a lot of models will say, well, go have a quiet time or go out to eat or someone watch the kids and whatever. It's hard to do if you're not getting along. And so this is an attachment ritual, which I think is what worship is on Sunday, where it's an attachment ritual. We're celebrating the bond, this incredible bond that we have with God throughout the week. And so we go there for that reason. And so those are things that we really look at, so they can keep the love alive is the word. I think that's a good word.
Well, I like that too, that you mentioned when you're keeping the love alive, that's not the first step. Because a lot of people think, oh, well, that, just have a date night, that it's going to take care of everything. But you really say that if you're not getting along, forcing couples to have a date night means they're just going to argue or sit silently. They're just taking their negative pattern along on their date.
Yeah. You ask them to go argue in public, or to sit in a restaurant and realize we're the only two people in the whole restaurant that aren't talking to each other. Yeah. So it comes at the end of these bonding conversations. It comes at the end of safety and security, where they can relax and be themselves, because there's this tension, right, that just doesn't go away. And so when the tension's gone, and when they look forward to it, and when they go and they can really just relax and be with each other without being tense and being so careful too with how they word things if they try to have a conversation. It's a different story.
Well, and then some of that too is like the difference in how they phrase things. I know you had mentioned Sue's phrase, no risky, no giddy. That just how they use different words to describe their vulnerability. Can you give some examples of that? Because I think our marriage champions, it's going to resonate once they hear the way you say it.
Yeah. So really what it boils down to, there's what we call primary emotions, or especially in EFT, we look at attachment related emotions, the kind of emotions that grab us in a relational kind of setting. And it's sad, anger, shame, joy, and surprise. And we know that we're calling primary, but they're adaptive, because if we touch on those, if we experience those, it's like a check engine light on the car, my truck coming on it saying, hey, something isn't right under the hood. And if we are still with it and we listen to it, it tells us what we need and how we can reach and ask our other to meet that need. And so that's the kind of that's where the conversations become very different. And when that happens, you're creating a brand new cycle of relating. And not that you don't slip back. All life is about order, disorder, and reorder. Relationships are the same. There are going to be times when it's just like everything's in order. This is great. We've worked through it. And then there's going to be outside things, children, problems in school. I mean, aging parents, that's where me and my wife are right now. Those kind of things that apply pressure to the relationship. And so, those emotions those adaptive emotions are there for a reason. And so, yep, that's the difference. And then I want to say this because I know I'm a guy, okay, and I work a lot with the military, and the military guys they're tough guys, right? And they have to compartmentalize.
Right.
And they're trained to do that because their life depends on it, and the ones next to them depend on them compartmentalize. I mean, they can't just sit there and think about how miserable they are, right, in this setting, or how scared they are. And that's okay. We need airplane pilots. I don't want my pilot to get on the plane and say, oh my goodness, my wife had a baby and it's got colic and I was up all night and I didn't sleep, but we're going to get off the ground. I'd like for them to be able to focus on what they're doing, first responders and all that. The issue is if they can cut that off when they come home, and that's what's hard. So what it is, this is not emotionally focused feeling therapy where we just find this word and throw it out there and it's different or point it off on a chart. This is something that we call it affective simile. So we sit and help a person who's never had anybody give them language for what they feel, like a withdrawer. I mean, a withdrawer says, I don't know what I feel, but that's true. They don't know. That is an answer. But as Sue would say, we sit with them and do what a good mother would do. We sit with them. We talk about, what do you tell yourself when this happens? What do you feel that in your body? What do you usually do when this happens? And then kind of where they kind of connect that, right? Assemble it. And then you ask, so what comes up for you right now? What do you, and then that word comes up. Okay. So it's not just, it's a process, and it's not just like looking for a feeling. Yeah. And then if we learn the process, then we can do that. And so, anyway, I just want to throw that in because a lot of times people say, "Oh man, my husband wouldn't know a feeling if you slapped him."
There's a way to help them get there, and then see what's under the anger or under the withdrawal.
It's a process, and we're non-pathologizing. We just leave the scales of justice outside the door. We're just here to be with you. Your strategies are protective strategies there for a reason, to protect you. And they're probably there for good reason. And if I sit with you long enough and hear your story, I'll understand that. I'll understand why those are there. And I'm going to honor and respect them. I'm not going to take them away from you. I'm not going to thump you on the head for having them, but I'm going to be with you. And if you feel safe enough with me and feel safe enough to this session, you'll feel safe enough to feel. We cannot feel if we don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And so that's really the essence of what we do.
That is really profound. We can't feel if we don't feel safe. I think that is a huge takeaway from our conversation. Before we go, though, we would be remiss if we didn't talk. You're doing an online course through International Christian Coaching to train our marriage helpers, which would be like our champions here, mentors, pastors, coaches, how to use EFT for couples. So let's talk about that a little bit, because they can access that course right through the ICC, ICCI.
Absolutely. So here's the thing: we have all these Creative for Connection resources. We have the facilitator's guide. So if somebody wants to do a group or a home fellowship, there's a guide and they can read it. And there's you can get that online at MFI, Marriage Family Institute. I'm assuming they'll add those to this discussion somewhere or in the literature.
Absolutely.
So, and so there's that. But then there's the online course. And it's self-guided. And what's neat about it is people can do it at the privacy of their home, and they do it on separate computers. Even so, our deployed military are doing it. A lot of people that travel can still work on the relationship in different locations, but they still come together and try to have those bonding conversations. So it's self-guided. But the other option then is, and what we did with ICCI was we came up with the online Creative Connection course that couples go through. Is embedded in the videos itself, the training videos. It stops, pauses, and then we talk about this is what happens when this couple comes in and talks to you about this, and how would you process this first bonding conversation with them? How do you know you're in over your head? And this couple, there's contraindicators for even being with them. Or how do you know if maybe you're over your head and they need more professional help? So then we go to conversation 2 and we process it. Plus we integrate faith. We give them ideas about how to integrate faith in that piece too. So we go through every one of those conversations like that. Then at the end, we talk about our bond with God, that kind of thing. But then we talk about logistical things like, what do you do when you're having if you have a marital enrichment weekend and a couple kind of implodes and they make a fuss and want to leave. I mean, all the things that we have experienced, and believe me, I was just speaking that a lot. And how to set them up, how to advertise them, how to screen for the groups, that kind of thing. All that is in those 10, I think it's 10 videos. So that a pastor in a rural community, our rural communities are suffering terribly bad. They don't have resources, and the suicide rate for farmers and ranchers right now is some of the highest in the nation because of the stress in there, and there's no resources. So if our churches, and that's what I'm working with a particular state right now with, training marriage mentors and having these groups so we can really be first responders maybe to couples in distress. Well, because what happens most of the time, only 2% or less, I think, of therapists do marital therapy. And actually, I have to admit, it's not all of them are really trained in so much in couple therapy. And then how do you see them? I mean, it takes months and it takes money. And sometimes most couples wait 7 to 8 years before they come in anyway. Well, if we could catch them on the front end in our churches, in these, in this setting, and what we can offer is something no one else can offer, and something that's very, very clear in Scripture, and that's community.
Yeah,
that's something that they need so bad. We have lost our village. We've lost what it's like to live in a community where we move. Our kids are displaced. Our whole world is different. We're living in a community of two, which puts a lot of stress on that relationship. So the community piece is unbelievable, and it's the most important piece. And I don't know of any other institution on the planet Earth that can provide that and usher that in and love on people and support them like the church could. And I really believe that's what we're called to do. And we have good research. We have good research that says it works.
Oh, well, that is great.
America, Europe, and our marital enrichment. So Sue didn't do anything without studying it, and so, we can go in with confidence.
Yeah. Well, that is a great exhortation to our marriage champions that they are on the front lines and to get some training. So anyway, Kenny, it's been so inspiring to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to be here and spending our time together.
Marriage champions, if you'd like to learn more about Kenny Sanderfer and Created for Connection, you can always find us at marriageinitiative.org or marriageresources.org.